Okay, I'm having a heck of a time trying to figure out what exactly is holding the rest of this intake in there, but it just so happens the gasket kit that I have has the two gaskets. This intake is actually in two pieces. There's an upper piece and a lower piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to just disconnect the upper from the lower. There's 5 fasteners that run along up here. If I get that off of there and just pull it off that way, I'm really just trying to get to this gasket. So if the lower part of the intake wants to stay in, let it stay in. Just going to remove this bracket here. Thankfully, these are a little bit easier to get to. Well, a few miscellaneous things need to come out of the way. A couple of grounds. Looks like they stuffed one up back there. I'm really grateful it hit the floor. Notice I'm using a flare wrench on this. I think I see the culprit. More than one place that's attached. I sure don't make it easy. So Nissan, if you're watching, look what you've done. See what you've done. I guess that'll do. Come on. There ain't nothing left holding you back. Oh, that is so funny. The lower intake's dropping down, but this upper intake is still attached by something. So there's still some fastener that I've yet to find. Okay, I found them. Right here, on the ends of these, under here. There are fasteners. Just sort of hanging out there, hiding. They're the last pieces of the puzzle. And then I should be able to get this intake off. Oh my. Hopefully that's gonna do it. Yes! I've already got my bucket under there, catching that. I better see a broken intake gasket. My testing showed that it was gonna be right over here. at least I can see that I was right. Check it out, cylinder number 4. And I pulled it off this way. The whole bottom half of the gasket is missing. You can see where it's on the other cylinders, but here on cylinder number 4 you can see where the gasket just deteriorated. It kind of fell right out. So there's your problem right there. Okay, prying on this intake is not getting me past these studs. There's one on both sides. So what I'm going to end up doing is just removing those studs, because I just need to get in there to replace that gasket. I don't really need to do much else. This is the stud, and I'm just going to use this pair of vice grips because it seems like the easiest thing for me to do. This is the stud that the intake really does not want to come off of, and so I'm going to be very careful to grab the inner part of it. And not those threads, because I don't want to risk damaging the threads. So far I can't get it to budge. The thing is these little guys right here rarely ever let me down. These are actual vice grips. Just like I said, they rarely let me down. Ta-da! Now this other side doesn't seem to have the same issue. I'm just gonna pry it off of that stud. Then again, it's like backed right up against it. So I think I'm gonna do the same thing over here. If I do it while it's in a bind like that, it's just gonna be more difficult to get out. That's why I'm sort of bringing it back a little bit. Okay. Now it's a matter of getting that gasket out of there and getting the new one in. And we have a limited amount of space to work with, but that's just how this works sometimes. It's gonna come in with my gasket scraper just to see if I can peel what's there away. Very fortunate that it seems to be coming off fairly easily. A few spots. Looks like I'm going to have to go back over. Looks like this gasket was failing in more than just one spot. And when I stick this pry bar down in here, I'm trying to stick it in areas where there's no damaging the mating surfaces. Okay, I believe we're all squared away now, and then I have all the old gasket material removed from the cylinder head. Now it's a matter of installing the new gasket and putting everything back together. Hopefully it goes together easier than it comes apart. Most times that's what happens. Just going to shoot a little cleaner down in here to get rid of some of the particulates. And I just want to make sure that my surface is clean and I don't have anything in there that might hinder the new gasket. Yeah, it all looks good. So let's get that gasket. Let's get those studs in there. Let's get this thing back together. All right, here's my new gasket. I'm not going to put anything on it. I'm just going to drop it in there and put my studs in to kind of hold it in place. I'll be very careful not to cross thread these, which is real easy to do with this kind of weight. In fact, what I think I'll do, I think I'll take this center bolt, stick it in, and get that one started. This way I know I got something to work against. I think that one started pretty good. Still worried about the other side though. Yeah, I think I got it. Okay, I'm gonna pull out my center. Tighten these up. That was good. All right, now that that's back in, just gonna try to put my center fastener in, but I'm just gonna run it down finger tight. And the reason I want to do that is because there's so many brackets and things like that that need to be connected. And if this thing has a little bit of wiggle room like it does now, it's a lot easier to deal with than if it doesn't have that. And then some of you might be asking a good question. You broke the lower part of the intake loose. You should be replacing that gasket also. But given the difficulty that it's taken me to get this far, I have my doubts about that gasket. I should have, before I put these studs in, done something about it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually put those fasteners all back in and run that thing together. That gasket wasn't leaking. If it does leak, I'll have to eat it. I'm rolling the dice here, I admit it. But in this situation, I'd just kind of rather be done. First, I'm gonna put these nuts back up on these studs. Not that I'm worried about it coming off, it's just one less fastener to worry about. Once again, just finger tight. Now I'd like to get these ones down under this throttle body. Now I'm going to get that bracket started underneath, and once I do that, I'm going to start tightening everything down. The last thing I'm going to tighten is the brackets. I'm actually going to tighten the intake manifold of the cylinder head first. Okay, yeah. I'm going to try to reconnect this bracket here. This is trickier than it looks one-handed. Not that you can see. I'm going to take this pry bar, push up on the intake on it, thread the fastener in, and that did the trick. I'm able to get it started. So that's what I needed. Since the intake was, the weight of that was laying down, it wouldn't let me get that one fastener in. Now I'd like to come in, get all my intake fasteners started, and well, actually I might just tighten up my center one now, because pretty much everything that's important is started. So now that the intake can be tightened up, I believe, I'm going to start by tightening it up against the cylinder head. And I'm doing this for the most part because this way, when I go to put in those other fasteners up here, they'll be able to go in easier. But my brackets and everything are good to go. So now let's see if I can get these tightened up on the intake here. And once I've done that, then I'm just going to work my way down, and the last thing I'm going to tighten is the brackets. Remember these guys? These guys that were hiding. Oh, it has been a long day for Eric the Car Guy, I can tell you. I mean, you just get to sit there and watch, but me, I have to live it. I say we just leave those other fasteners out. Yeah, I know. I gotta do it. Now, for the best part ever. I'm gonna feed these down with my magnet, just like I took them out. I just really hope I can get them in. Started in the right direction, if nothing else. There we go. All right, now this is the part where having the other ones started and tight may very well work in my favor, because I'm just working it with this magnet, same way I did to get those old ones out, trying to catch a thread. And once I do, I'm kind of home free. All right, I'm gonna start that other one. Fantastic. This one's having a little more trouble catching a thread. All right, this one's gotten a little stiff, so I've actually got two magnets and I'm working back and forth to try and turn the fastener. I can't quite reach. It's actually fairly effective. Okay, I've given up on the two magnet method, and I'm now just holding the socket onto the fastener with my screwdriver and just millimeter by millimeter tightening this guy up. Oh, and every once in a while that's been happening. Well, I'm closing in on the final few turns here. Which in some ways are the most difficult. And if some of you may be wondering why I'm not torquing these, well, there's just no way that I can think of. This is a true test of manual dexterity. This one's a little easier because you can sneak in through the side. I'll show you that real quick. See, I've got my ratchet stuck through and under that way. This one I had to go through the top. There's just no way around that, but this one you can kind of sneak in through the side and get a little bit of extra leverage. I think now that we got those two difficult ones out of the way, I think the rest should go fairly smoothly. I think the rest I'll just get with a wrench. I can actually fit a wrench down in there. Done. Hopefully, the hard part is over. Open. Let's see what we can do about these other fasteners for the connections to the upper and lower. I'm going to start with the center on this one. Give you an overview of what's happening, since it's difficult for me to show you this and work at the same time. Is I'm going to reattach my harness, I'm going to reattach my brackets and such, backing lines, everything else across the top, and I'm going to work my way over to the side. And so far, so good, really. It's not going too bad at this point. Most difficult thing is those other mounts and things, or these two. Once you get past those two fasteners, you're kind of home free. These grounds are very important. Don't forget to tighten them. Always start like your tubes and stuff first before you tighten stuff down. If not, you work yourself into a corner and then you're stuck. Okay, I think I'd like to get my fuel rail back into place. Before I do, I'm just gonna hit those O-rings just with a little silicone spray. And this will help ensure that these don't get rolled over. Now, if you remember, we had our little plastic insulators that sit down in here that we need to install before we get too far. Well, looks like they just sort of rest there on those O-rings, which I suppose is all right. I'm not going to say that it doesn't make me nervous, but it is what it is. Of course, you want to plug everything back in. Starting to look like an engine again. Lucky us. I think I'm going to go underneath, tighten up that bracket down there so that I'm completely done underneath, and then come back up here and finish it up. All right, we're back under the car. There's that bracket that we're going to tighten up, if you remember. There's a 12 that holds it directly to the intake, which is easy enough to get to with just a plain old ratchet. And then there's a 14 that connects to the block to finish it up. I'm doing this now because if I'd done this first, I imagine it'd be a little more difficult to get those intake fasteners because they get into a bind. Everything seems easy now that I'm done with that intake. That was just brutal. It's a little difficult to get to with a socket. The reason I'm using a wrench. And I'm doing it just as blind as you. So I can't see what I'm doing, I'm just feeling. This is down behind the axle. This is why it's difficult to get a socket onto. Time for a different tool. Done. This is what I used. 14 swivel, So little head ratchet. Done. We're done under here. I'll start with those that are up under the throttle body here. They go to this bracket. That big old 30 millimeter again. I think we're ready for our throttle cable to come back. Oops, one came out. Simple enough to redo. You just slide it back in the hole it came out of, and then you're there. Now with throttle cables, especially since I had these like all over the place, I need to make sure that I haven't got them bound up or anything. And so far so good. It doesn't look like they got twisted or bent out of shape. And there were 3 fasteners that held this guy on. I like that I don't have a bunch of stuff left over. That makes me happy. Can't forget to hook up our throttle linkage. Just pops into place. Ignition wires. Air filter. Get our air box back into place. For me, a little bit of silicone spray on rubber parts before installation makes them go together better. Just a little bit though. You don't want to soak it. Silicone doesn't get along with O2 sensors, so you got to be careful. Just to give you an overview, mass airflow sensor hooked in here. I'm gonna have to unhook this again. There's a vacuum line here that needs to be hooked up. This needs to be hooked back up. PCV needs to be hooked back up. And of course down here into the muffler assembly needs to be hooked up. I want to make sure these connections are tight, because you don't want to fool the mass airflow sensor into getting that it's getting air that it's not. So don't make them so tight that you can tear the boots, but definitely make them secure. Don't worry, I won't forget this one. We had our sort of fastened heat shield. Oh, wait. Yeah. Retouch that security horn and I think that's it. I think we're ready to start it up. Front end is up in the air. I have to bleed the cooling system out. We did lose a bit. Let's see if this old girl runs. The noise you hear is the alternator. I'm gonna bleed this cooling system out, and then we'll wrap this up. The Nissan Altima 2.4 liter intake gasket. It's not for the weak at heart. In fact, I would say that this is probably a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10 difficulty. And it pretty much has to do with those lower intake manifold bolts. It's gonna be a fight, and you're gonna have to get creative with your tools to make that happen. And in fact, if you don't have tools similar to what I used, I don't think you're gonna be able to do it. I didn't really use a lot of tools. It's just, I really had to get down and dirty to try to find the correct tools for those lower bolts. So, and you know, there was a lot of work, In fact, it took me pretty much all day to complete this job. It's done, it runs smooth. We did fix the car, but you know, should you find yourself confronted with this, know you're gonna be in for a fight. I don't often say that. I often try to encourage you to take on, you know, your own repairs, but in this case, Anyway, I hope you found this information useful. I'm real sorry I couldn't get you in there the whole time. I needed room to work, and you know, if I don't have room to work, I'm just smacking you around, and I don't know, you might like that. We've got the car running. We're ready to get it down the road, and you know, it runs actually fantastic right now, so I couldn't be happier with the result. Anyway, I am Eric the Car Guy. You can always find me over at EricTheCarGuy.com, where you can ask your automotive questions. Also, there will be a discussion about this video in the forum, so look for that there. I'll put a link in the description just to make it easy for you. Also, Google+, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find me there. Love meeting new people. And I close with be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. And hopefully you don't have any intake gasket leaks. I'll catch you later.